Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. And this week we're going to talk very much about your shop window and about our clients actually and candidates viewing your shop window and looking to buy the products and services that you're selling, because buyers' trends have massively changed in the last 3 years. And I'm not sure the recruitment market has really captured what trends have changed, why social proof now is so important, why your brand is so important. So we've got some guests on this week. We've got Johnny Miller, the MD of Outline Designs. I think, Johnny, we've been working together probably from the concept of Outline Designs about 10 years ago. Your aim has always been to bring recruitment business to life, from branding, website, job board strategies and marketing strategy. We're always joined by Jez, let's get this right, Jez Kutku, okay, who is a creative brand strategy, who's also working alongside Johnny. And we have another Jump partner today, Tim Stiles, joining us, who is, again, another IT expert, more on the cyber front than anything else. So he's going to be joining us and adding to the questions. So I'm going to jump straight in. There's no stats today, so I'm going to jump straight in and work on that. So first question, I'm going to look at, see how we thought about this. Brand. Why is it so important in 2024? Johnny?
Well,
Jez, you want to take this one?
I could probably jump in on this one actually to start. Yeah. Cheers, Howard. Thanks for that. So I guess what I want to say is that it's increasingly competitive out there. We all know this. But what it means is that your audience, your clients and candidates, and your staff as well, they've got more choice now than probably they've ever had before. So you need to be seen, and you need to be remembered as that choice, as a good choice. So how they find you and how they look at you and how you make them feel, that natural human response, it kind of all adds up to help people answer that question. Why should they choose you? And something me and Johnny say a lot to people is, people are going to make assumptions about you and your brand, regardless of what you do or don't do, or how much effort you put in or not. If you don't own that, if you're not controlling that, or if you're not trying to create that influence, that experience, then your audience, they're just going to do it for themselves anyway, based on their perceptions in their heart and their mind. So you really got to control that, because if you make that effort to build or maintain a better brand experience that's engaging, that shows empathy and it's consistent to help build that familiarity, and be memorable and just be relevant, probably the most important thing, just be really relevant to them, then you've got a much stronger chance of getting their attention, sustaining their interest, and becoming that choice. And if you don't do that, then I guess the truth is you're just going to be ignored. You're just going to be overlooked and maybe even avoided, because the reality is that our worlds, our lives, our minds, our heads, it's all just so busy. There's a limit to what we can take on board. So if we haven't got, if we're not engaging with you, we're too busy to take it in. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I think I'm going to ask the next question and then go back again and come back to you on that, Jess, because I think there's things to add. And I think Johnny's going to add on the next question on where we need to go backwards and forwards too. So if you mentioned there about clients viewing your profile. So how clients are viewing recruitment agencies' websites and profiles, when they initially think about engagement, or more to the point, after a recruitment consultant or an agency has sent an email out, how do clients then initially look to engage with that agency?
I think it's changing, Howard, to be honest. I think as Gen Z clients are increasing year on year, and we've seen it in our client base, I remember when I started my business, when we started working together, I was the young guy. Now it's the next generation coming through, and those guys value that stuff more. They've grown up with social media. They've grown up with, being surrounded by really strong branding, strong, visual engagement with smartphones and push notifications and all that kind of stuff. So their experience or their expectations of a brand experience are significantly different to some of the older generations that might have been a little bit more old school, that might have been, cold callers, cold emails, a little bit more faceless, a little bit more less engaging and less part of an emotional experience almost, something you can buy into. So when we're dealing with Gen Z recruiters, we're finding that their mentality and their mindset towards branding is significantly more advanced than someone who might be Gen X or millennial even. And for that reason, they're focusing more on visual presentation, verbal presentation, consistency of brand across all channels, and getting the right message across, as Jez alludes to, so people are making the right assumptions about them and they're not making the wrong assumptions about them, basically. And also, just in addition to that, another thing that the next generation are taking brand more seriously because of is their internal culture. So brand strategy, if you want to call it that, informs not just your presentation to your clients and your candidates, it also informs the presentation to your potential employees, and then also the culture that you adopt internally to help not just attract the best recruitment staff, but to help retain them as well in a high turnover environment. I mean, ultimately, brand matters to someone that matters to you, and that number is increasing. So even if it doesn't matter to you, it matters to someone who matters to you. So that's the message that we like to get across. It's not just a sales tool. It's a way of just, helping in every facet of your business, whether it's internal recruitment, onboarding candidates, onboarding clients, etc.
So I'm going to ask a question, or add to that question to go back to question 1 and question 2, and then I'm going to answer Jojo Hal's question, or ask Jojo Hal's question as well, because he should put a question in the question box. So what we're saying is then that clients now, and if you start to look at stats, they're saying 50 to 80% of the client journey is now done online, and it's done before they actually speak to any salespeople. That's the general stat across all sales. And what they're generally looking at is they're looking for social proof. But also what we're finding is that there is between 6 and 8 decision makers made in every decision in a company over 20. Okay. Therefore, there's lots of people who may be viewing your brand and viewing your profile. So is what you're saying is that how your profile is pushed on the buyer, irrespective whether people realize it's being viewed by the buyer or not, is really important, because that's the first engagement they have with your company, and therefore it should be more about what the buyer wants rather than look at me, we're such a great recruitment agency.
Yeah, if you're not controlling your narrative in those various different channels and you're relying on those conversations, I mean, they're still important parts of the sales process, don't get me wrong. People buy from people ultimately, and it involves a conversation at some point. But like you said, 50% of it is to do with their own research and them finding reviews online and just looking at your overall presentation in what is a crowded market. So your narrative needs to be controlled in every way, basically, to ensure that you're giving yourself the best opportunity. And it's almost like recruiters taking their own advice that they give to candidates. Like, you wouldn't put out a CV that missed out half your experience. You wouldn't put out a CV that neglected to mention some of the volunteering work you did that might be really credible, or whatever, or some of your qualifications. You want to give yourself the best possible chance of getting selected for interview. And the only way of doing that now, when you're a business, is making sure that every touch point is consistent and is of a certain standard, so that no matter where a client's entry point is for your business, they're getting the same experience. And whether it's through you or one of your team, because again, this is where it all ties together, where an employee has to understand your brand just as much as you understand it if you're wanting to grow and you're wanting that experience across all channels to be the same or as consistent as possible. It just means that, like I say, if you level that off so that that consistency exists and those rules are in place, you're giving yourself the best possible opportunity.
So I knew this question would come up somewhere along the line, so I'm going to ask this question now before we get into the next questions. And this is from Jojo Hal. I hear mixed messages about the relevant SEO in these days. Some say it's a complete waste of time and we're better off focusing on social media. I'd be keen to know what your view is, and I'd be including your view on this, Tim, as well, being a techie on SEO. So Johnny, Jez, SEO first and foremost, good, bad, indifferent?
It depends is the easy answer, because we work with a lot of clients who are in very niche markets where it's quite difficult to get any kind of traction with organic search. It's the broader markets that tend to be easier for that. So it all depends on what the research gleans, really. Any SEO campaign should be based around keyword research. So what you're looking for within keyword research is how many searches are the keywords getting, and then how competitive are those keywords. So you want something that's relatively low competition, but relatively high volume, something that's achievable for a small business that doesn't have a marketing team or whatever behind them, or endless amounts of budget. In some instances, that search volume just isn't there because the clients are too niche or they're in such a niche space. But in others, it is more appropriate. So, for example, we've got a lot of guys who are like in really niche tech. So, like financial tech. So, like Workday and all that kind of stuff. And they struggle with SEO because it's just so specific. Whereas we've got healthcare clients who are looking for international nurses and things like that. And they're just get so much from like even just putting a tiny bit into Google Ads even. So it is a case by case, really. It depends where your audience is ultimately.
And I think there's also a piece about using the people who are contacting you and asking them, how did they find you?
Yeah.
And are they coming to you because they've done a web search? Are they coming because they've seen your social media? Are they coming through referrals? And considering whether you need to perhaps put a bit more effort into the channels that people are actually using. If nobody is searching for you on the internet, Google searches, etc., then all the SEO in the world isn't going to make any difference because they're actually all coming to you through word of mouth.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, England, I'm going to come back to your question because I think your question is quite relevant, and we're going to try to cover that a little bit later on, but I think it's very relevant. So I'm going to push back on branding again. So why is a strong brand then more important than ever for recruitment businesses in 2024? Jess, do you want to pick up on that?
I suppose just like I said before, if you don't put the effort in, people are going to do it for you, and you haven't got that control. You don't know how they're going to do it, and you can't. It's going to be harder to grow, I suppose, in certain ways because you're being held back by your perception, by people's perception of how you come across, how you present, and that can be negative and damaging if you're not controlling it, and that can affect things like how you retain staff or price point, things like that. You can't present as kind of lower brand, but then charge premium prices, if that makes sense. So it's kind of all got to be aligned.
I think that word perception then is a really interesting word because quite a lot a recruitment agency does their branding, does their social media, does their website, and it's based on their perception of what people think rather than actually going out and finding what people actually think of their branding. And so what you're saying is then it should be from the clients and the candidates' point of view rather than from the vanity point of view of the agency.
Yeah, for me, you put in the little bits of the puzzle in place and people will figure it out. For me, that is branding, is that they build that perception of you themselves. It's not almost for you can control it, but they're going to make their mind up based on what you serve them and what the experience is like.
Okay.
Howard, can I just interject just quickly? And one of the things that I think a point that's been made very well is that it's not just about attracting business, but it's absolutely, if you're talking about a major challenge for recruitment companies, it's absolutely about attracting and retaining your own people. And the image that we put out there is absolutely pivotal to winning business and maintaining the narrative, as the guys have been saying. But I think it's also extremely important from the perception of bringing people into your business and keeping them, because if they see competitors who are looking, as it were, more attractive, there's a chance they may jump ship. There is that whole EVP thing to consider, employer value proposition. This is it's not a singular issue. This kind of multifaceted in terms of what impact your image has through your web presence, and I think that's a point very well made.
I think to add to your EVP, you've got CVP as well. You've got your client value proposition as well, because obviously clients are looking to buy. You've got a candidate value proposition. What are they looking to buy? And we tend to sort of see there. And one thing that your comment there, just I think was very sort of comment, is it's the experience that you provide to them. And I think, Johnny, when we first designed a website, ages, probably 10 years ago now, I think the comment was, let's go give it to my mum to see if my mum can actually navigate through the website. My mum at the time was about sort of 78 or something like that. And if she couldn't navigate the website, then the experience is too hard. And we want to make that user experience really simple, really simplistic for people to use. And some of the websites I look on, the user experience is almost zero because it's not great. So if we move forward then on that, what are the pitfalls then of a weak brand? And what risk does it pose to the recruitment business potential and future?
Yeah, so we work on the basis of like four main points here as to why brand is significantly important to a business's growth, essentially. So if you're in a position where you've been going maybe a year or two, and you're looking to go that next level, you might be bringing internal recruiters in to grow your team. You might just be trying to get that next level of client on board. We think there's four main things you need to focus on. So communication is the first. So in order to cement your brand's position within the market, it needs to be continuity, consistency throughout everything that you do. The inconsistency in a verbal presentation and a visual presentation will confuse, and that confusion doesn't build trust. It does the opposite. And what you want to do is you want to build brand recognition and perceived value. So there's perceived value in that consistency. As a result of that, you've got the next thing, which is buy-in. So if people understand your message and the buy-in to your values and your ethos as a business because they understand it, then buy-in is easier. So you mentioned before, Howard, about a lot of the client experience is online. They're doing their own research. They might have had a referral or whatever, but they're looking online to see what are they getting from you by doing a Google search or looking you up on social media or looking at your reviews or whatever. If they understand what you're all about and they're getting your personality and what you stand for and why you're different and why they should work with you, then the subsequent conversations are a lot easier. So that applies not just to clients, but as Paul's just mentioned there, it applies to candidates and also employees. If I'm applying for a job somewhere, I want to know where I'm going to be working and what it's going to be like to work there. And you want to be able to get that from your research. And then there's the representation piece, which again, I've touched on earlier, which is that if you're growing and expanding your team and you don't have all of those foundations in place, then every time a client comes in or a candidate and speaks to someone who's representing your business, they're not going to get the same experience as what they are through you. When you're a one-man brand, a solopreneur, it's easier to control that because you're having all of the conversations. But when other people are doing it for you, whether it's employees or even vendors who are representing you, if they don't understand the message, they don't understand the narrative, they don't know how to get that across, then it's going to result in that inconsistent experience as well across all channels. And then perception is the fourth thing. If you get all of those three things right, communication, buying, and representation, then the perception of the brand is elevated. So as Jez touched on before, a brand that presents as budget is never going to get past a certain ceiling in terms of growth because the perception isn't there that they are a premium service and therefore they can't push their prices as high as they want, or they maybe can't work with certain clients because they don't look as good, basically, because the way they are presenting is of a lower standard. So those four things all kind of tie together, but we think that they're the things that basically recruitment companies, or any company really, but specifically in the recruitment space, should be looking at and should be focusing on in order to make sure that their growth or their the continuous improvement continues.
What you're saying there is that essentially what we've been saying for quite some time, that when someone sends out an email, we send email campaigns out, we instantly see a spike on our website of people visiting to our website, but we also know a spike on our social media profiles, that people are viewing our social media profiles, whether it be our personal profiles or whether it be our jump profiles, and that's people checking that the continuity is there. They're checking that what we're saying is right. We're checking what we're delivering. And it goes back to that conversation that we've been having quite a bit about. They are checking for social proof that you are what you are. And if there's a discontinuation of that brand proposition, then that's a question mark to ask straight away. Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah, it creates uncertainty. If the message is unclear, then it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty does nothing to positively impact the relationship building process. So it's all of these subtle things that are part of it that help the clarity of what you're actually doing. So, do I need this in my life? Will it help me achieve my goals or solve my problems? They want those questions answered without having to put a great deal of effort in that they shouldn't have to put in. And quite frankly, it should all be there. It should all be in front of them.
Yeah, it's a bit like dating analogy almost as well, isn't it? If you say you're on Tinder or something like that and you see a picture of someone you like and you agree to meet up and have a date and then they turn up and they're nothing like that picture, that's damaging, isn't it? And there's not going to be a second date. you're going to feel like you've been lied to or catfished or whatever you want to put it. So
yeah, it's a misdirect. It's a misdirect. So there is a lot of business catfishes out there. You're trying to avoid that wherever possible. So I mean, obviously we're trying to help people who are doing it the other way, where they aren't doing themselves justice, but obviously the people who are branding themselves in a way that is misleading. And yeah, so that it's the counter argument almost, but yeah, it's definitely relevant.
Well, I'd like to thank Jez for a first there. We've been doing this for 4 years, and that's the first time Tinder has been brought up. Paul, I might have to explain that to you later.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what he's talking about, to be perfectly honest.
I think it's Bumble these days anyway. I think we're just showing our age.
So as we move forward then, and I'm going to ask this question, then I'm going to go back to Andrew English's question. Okay, what's the most common mistakes then that recruitment business owners make when it comes to a verbal and visual presentation of their business, their brand, etc.?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing and the most obvious thing is thinking that it doesn't matter. That's the first thing. Thinking that a brand is just for marketing their clients and candidates, when it plays an enormous part in establishing an internal culture and giving the business itself some life and some personality that can be bought into. So that's the first thing. Thinking it's just a logo, thinking it's just colors, when it's not. It's not about the cosmetic stuff is part of branding, but it's more than that. The visual side of things should be an extension of the narrative, the verbal identity, the tone of voice. So producing collateral without any of that, without any verbal or visual brand direction, just creates noise, really. So that's another mistake. You know, I get people coming to me who think the answer to their question is to build a new website, when in reality, you know, they've got a current website that's just full of AI generated content and stock images that you've seen 1,000 times before, and other websites that have got values that are just, you know, what we would class as not values. There would be what are more minimum expectations of any business. So honest, transparent, professional. They're not values. They don't tell me anything about why you're different. They are just telling me, oh yeah, promise I'll do a good job. They're not telling me why I should choose you above others. So another mistake is that. Another mistake is thinking they're offering a unique service when they're not, and not really understanding that they're in a very crowded space that's getting more and more crowded as it's getting easier and easier to start businesses in the UK. And then just a lack of authenticity, you know, copying culture. Me and Jez like to call it the cul-de-sac culture of recruitment, is very much like that, where it's almost like I'm going to do that because someone else is who I know, rather than there being a real understanding of why it's being done. And as a result of that copying culture, they end up coming across as, I guess, disingenuous as a business, because they're not really showing their true self and why they exist, why they are different, what are they doing that's adding value to their clients. So I guess they're the main mistakes that I see quite consistently.
I think that's a brilliant description. One of the things that, you know, we talk about solopreneurs, and I think one of the powerful things that small agile recruitment businesses have going for them is the ability to put across their personalities. And in direct contrast to the really large, you know, the huge corporate recruitment businesses, like any other huge corporate business, whether it's in recruitment or not, they have a certain feel about them when you look at their websites. To me anyway, I always feel very distant when I engage with large corporate websites. I know what to expect when I see them. It's not very personal. I don't feel particularly engaged. I don't feel they're relevant to me. But when you work with smaller businesses, the ability to put across your personality and your belief system is absolutely available. So why, as you say correctly, why would you wish to mimic a large corporate website using the same old phrases and even stock photography that you can see? Why not be yourself, be true to yourself, and talk very loudly about what you can offer to your public as an individual, as a personality? Something in the order of 75%, maybe even a higher percentage of recruitment businesses are SMEs, in fact, micro businesses. And I think they have a great opportunity to be agile and different and unique and stand out from larger competitors as a result.
Absolutely. And who's to say as well that those corporations that you're talking about are doing things correctly? They've established a reputation over the years, and people know who they are, but they may have rested on their laurels. They may not be engaging with their audience in the way that's effective anymore. They're just purely on reputation, still managing to stick around. So yeah, they're certainly not necessarily the best people to try and aspire to be the best version of your business. Don't try and be like anyone else's.
So to jump in with Andrew's question, then I'd be interested on Jez's view on this first, and then before yours, Johnny. Okay, as a solo recruiter, I find time very limited. What would you advise as the most important thing that someone in his position should be doing?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so if you're I suppose if you're a bit more time poor, it's really being focused and targeted on what it is you want to achieve. So being quite clear and recognizing that you haven't got time to do, bigger campaigns and things. I suppose speaking to your audience, speaking to people you want to attract, and trying to understand what they want as well. So you can be more efficient there. It's quite targeted in that way. And there's tools out there. There's tools out there to help you with your branding and your messaging. Apart from working with me and Johnny, obviously. There's tools out there you can use which can help provide if you're trying to do content creation, for example, on a platform like LinkedIn. Yeah, which might be a good lead generation. There's things you can do there. Tools you can use, scheduling posts and things. There are ways out there. It's tricky, I suppose. It would probably be a conversation. If me and Johnny were having a conversation, we'd identify those kind of things and then work together with a plan for understanding where you are now, where you want to be, and what resources you've got available, and maximizing those. So I don't know if that's a really straight, clear answer, but it's being quite targeted and focused and really listening to what people want, the people you're trying to attract.
I think that last part of that question to me is what I would be going on. Where you're starting from, Andrew, where you're going to, what message do you need to get people to get you on that journey and get you to complete that journey?
Yeah.
I think that's what people seems to forget is that, as a solo recruiter, it's dead easy to just throw up a Wix website, etc., which has no real relevance to the business. It's just there as a marker more than anything else, rather than actually what is your website developing for you, what's your website actually doing for you. And I think to me, what's the most important thing is to get that brand presence right really from the get-go, and then understand where you're traveling from and where you're going to becomes an important part of the journey. Understanding that every step they take, people are still resorting back to your website as you move along that journey, and therefore your website should develop from there. Johnny, we've had this conversation in the past as a small business about that website development over a period of time, because your website should change as regularly as you change and as regularly as the market changes. What would you say then is the most important thing that as a solo recruiter they should be doing?
Well, the automation does come into it, but again, and you guys touched on it, and I know you touched on it with Sharon on the previous webinar about marketing automation. It was, it's got to be the right kind of automation. It can't just be generate a blog using ChatGPT, posting it automatically to LinkedIn every 4 days or whatever. It's got to be an automation process that actually helps your business and speaks to your audience in the correct way. And using your website as, again, a mirror to what else is going on in the business. So again, it seems to be that if change is happening, which over the last few years, a lot of recruitment businesses we worked with have changed out of necessity because of COVID and the lockdowns and everything, and the economy issues, and saturated markets elsewhere, having to pivot and move over to different things. And sometimes the other parts or the other channels, even, so they're operating in those areas, but their presentation pieces, their website, their social media, etc., that's still the old stuff. So it's just making sure that stuff is not just keeping up, but it's supporting it as well, because you want on your website, your socials, anything that you do marketing wise, really to be supporting the overall bigger picture targets of the business. So it's not just like, I was on a call yesterday, me and Jez both were, with a client who's got all of these people working for them on loads of different things, but we're all doing our own thing. So the wheels are all spinning, but they're all going in completely different directions, and the company itself isn't moving forward as a result. So the whole point of that call was like, what's actually happening within the business that we can all start pushing in our various different ways with the ad campaigns, the social media, the brand stuff, the print stuff, the website. How can we all make it sing from the same hymn sheet so that it's all consistent and all pushing in the same direction?
So let's move that on, because I think that falls really into the next question. Lots of leaders often think that what we've just discussed doesn't really apply to them. However, can you explain how someone can initially stress test their brand what the key differentiations, and why is your visual and written content so important when it comes to creating action. And I think that's the bit, creating action.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the stress test, and then Jez, you can talk about the differentiation, because I think it's really important. So from my perspective, the brand's stress test doesn't need to be anything complicated. It should just be asking yourself serious questions about how well you actually understand what it is that you're doing. So start by, do you understand your position within your niche? And if so, do you know who you're up against? So many times we find that the answer to that question is no, by people saying that they have a unique offering, when, quick Google search, 3 seconds, you can find 10 other companies that are ahead of them in the search rankings that are doing exactly the same thing. So do you truly understand that your position within the market? That's the first question. Do you have the basic verbal identity components in place? Do you have a mission statement? Do you have brand values? Do you live by those values? Are those values actually values, as I mentioned before, or are they just minimum expectations of anyone that you would engage with on a commercial level? Do your brand values tell your audience anything about what they can expect from their experience with you? Or do they counter that and say, all right, well, they haven't given that much attention to their values, they're just generic values. That what does that say about how they're going to treat me as a consumer? And the other questions would be around, again, the consistency piece. Does your audience get the same experience of your business regardless of the entry point? Whether it's website versus social versus email versus phone call, whether it's the business owner versus the employees versus the contractors. Typically, there is a lot of misalignment there in our experience. And just to follow on from that, is your messaging, your narrative, your overall brand messaging, is it defined to a point where anyone can just pick it up and run with it? So someone can come into the business and be like, right, I get it. Let's get to work. Or a contractor coming in who's doing ads or whatever it might be. And then how are you visually presenting? Are you presenting in a way that lines up with your ambition? So do you present as a budget brand or a premium brand? And if you want to be a premium brand, you need to do something about that. So it's just a case of asking those questions, self-analyze and self-criticize, and aim for continuous improvement. Don't just think that, all right, okay, I got a brand done 5 years ago, it's fine. Really ask those questions. That would be how I would stress test things.
Cool.
So about creating action then, because this is the bit that lots of people write lots of emails, Jez, and they drive them to, I think the 10% open rate is the average open rate of an email, and 1% going onto your website, and then it's creating action. So how do you create action then from your website on written content?
I suppose it's that really speaking to someone on a logical and emotional connection level. Sometimes I think that's important for brands communication to do that, and that's probably where having a really strong brand message underpins all of these messages. And something that I know we get bombarded with so much communication now, and it kind of links to that part about that question you said about differentiation and standing out. And for me, you've got to be a little bit bold. You've got to be a little bit brave, a little bit disruptive to get that cut through, to get that action, to make that happen. But probably most importantly, you still need to be genuine and authentic. And I know that's quite difficult for people to do, which is why people come work with me and Johnny, and we help people out with that kind of thing. So that's probably for me one of the key things, that being bold and being brave a little bit to get that attention, to then create that interest, then create that desire, to then have that action, that kind of classic model.
And I think I'd also make the case there for data, looking at the data, looking at what's working, what's not working, because I think, again, you can get into that loop of thinking we've got to send out an email every week, we've got to post on LinkedIn, whatever those things are. Looking at the response to them, what's working? Are you reaching the people that you want to reach? You talk there, Howard, about a 10% open rate. If you're not getting that, does that mean your subject line's not right? Try, start doing some A/B testing. Send out half of them with one subject line, half with another. See if the people that you're trying to reach perhaps respond to email, or do they respond better to LinkedIn posts, or is it different types of social media? So I think, again, following on what Jez and Johnny have said there, it's is just using that data piece as well, not just keep doing things.
Yeah. I think also there's a lot of accepting that there is constant testing and learning, and being okay with that, and accepting that that is part of the process. So,
Yeah.
you know, not feeling like, oh, this is a waste of time because no one replied to that one. But it's like, yeah, but what do we learn from that? Try this one.
So let's push that a little bit further then. Let's look at sort of key areas of recruitment business, look at business owners they focus on, but are often those can look when brand recognition is there because they're in a niche and they surely think their clients know who they are, know what they do, and that's often overlooked. So looking at that as a recruitment business owner who focuses on their niche but doesn't focus on brand recognition because they think because they're in that niche everyone knows them. I've been saying for quite some time that we are obscure, although we think that we are absolutely, everyone knows us, but we're obscure in the marketplace. So how do you then work a solution then around that is, irrespective of the business setup or establishment, how can their brand be using their website or their shop window to help with growth and expansion?
Yeah, because we do work with clients who even now still exclusively work on word of mouth because they're in such a niche market. It's like they think that everyone knows who they are, and that might very well be the case at the moment. But as new businesses are starting, and as I said before, the next generation is coming through. They're going to have different expectations. You don't want to get left behind. So I guess, they might know who you are. They might not know why or how or what exactly, if that message isn't clear enough to them, the new people coming into that network. So give yourself the best possible chance of being chosen in what is in, a sea of alternative options. I guess, as you mentioned, the niches, at the minute you might have the monopoly on, but how long for? So are you ready for that change? Are you ready for that competition to come creeping in? Because it seems like an inevitable I guess process that recruiters go through where they do their time working for an agency and then they build up their contacts and their experience and their methodology, and then they go out and that's why there's so many. I think Paul mentioned 75% of recruitment agencies in the UK are micro businesses that have started, as a result of them getting into recruitment, doing their time, and then starting. But it seems like the natural progression. So if you're the only person in a niche market at the minute, you're not going to be forever. So you need to be ready for that change.
I think a critical point that you guys alluded to as well in the last answer, as well as this one, Johnny, is that we can often see ourselves as experts. We see ourselves as experts within our own four walls. One of the absolutely critical things that every business needs to do, let alone a recruitment company, is to be consistently talking to their audience, going out, talking to candidates to establish their view of you as a niche supplier, as an expert, and obviously and very clearly talking to your clients to understand what their perception of you is. Don't forget, as a recruiter, as you've pointed out, it's a very crowded market. They're in contact, clients and candidates, constantly with our competitors. What is their view of you as a business in relation to the competitors and indeed the new entrants to the market? As you've mentioned earlier, it's so easy now to set up a business and get on with it. And we often see the expansion of new businesses occurring during a recessive economy or directly after a recessive economy. So if it's not apparent now that you've got competitors, it certainly will be very shortly. And I think you need to understand how people view you. And the way to do that isn't to sit inside your own four walls and have discussions internally constantly. You've got to go out and speak to people in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, that complacency is a massive threat, I think, when people start being in that position. Which is one of the reasons why a lot of the projects me and Johnny work on, we run surveys at the very beginning just to learn some of the bigger projects. We run surveys to listen to what are your clients and candidates and your own team. What do they think about you? You can't just be, like you said, sat in your four walls, so kind of staring at your own belly button in an echo chamber of what you think you are. It's not always true.
If they're staring at their own belly button, I'm just assuming there'll be lots of fluff on the website.
Oh.
Remember that one.
But I think what we're talking about there, we go back to the earlier questions. It's about we are too believing in our own hype and our own perception of our own business.
Yep.
And I keep saying that you are obscure. And I remember with a client in London who was an accountancy business saying, no, I'm not obscure. And across the road was an accountancy company. I said, well, let's go ask them, see if they know you, because they see your business every day. And they had no clue who they were. I said, there you go. There's a business 20 yards across the road, same window height, doesn't know who you are. And they didn't understand that they are obscure, even though they thought everyone knows who they are. So last question, I think this is a question, it's not meant to be a sales pitch, and it's not meant to be, I suppose, a guide to go by. But it'd be an interesting thing to see what you two say about this. Sort of over the years, Johnny, you've helped literally build hundreds of recruitment websites, brands, etc. If you were a business owner listening to this conversation, and what we've discussed has started to sort of spark that question in their mind for them, obviously, besides calling you, what signs should they look for when considering if their verbal and visual presentation is holding them back? And the bigger question is what is the cost of a really good branding, and what evidence have you seen that investment can be not only returned, but also a transformative increase in revenue?
Yeah, I'll answer the question on the warning signs, and then Jez can follow up with the ROI stuff. So for me, again, it's just sitting down and asking yourself some straight questions. Are you stagnant as a business? Are you trying to grow and not experiencing growth? Are your methods still working as well as they once did? We mentioned, the old school methods, which still work at the moment, but they're going to be less and less, I guess, accepted by the younger generation of clients that are coming through. Are you attracting the level of both, well, I'll say both clients and candidates and employees that you aspire to? And if the answer to any of those questions is a negative answer, then that would be a warning sign. And then, what do people say about your brand when you're not in the room? Like, that would be another thing. Can you find out what people think about you? I think that's something we touched on in the last question as well. Get an understanding of what your perception actually is.
Yeah. I mean, the return on investment question, I've been working 20 years in branding, feel like I'm always having to justify why should we spend money on you, Jez? It's always so hard to measure. It's probably because it's a mix of lots of different things. It's different parts of the business. There's branding, there's marketing, there's advertising, there's sales, and they're all linked, but they're all kind of different things solving different problems. So advertising, is how you kind of deliver that message. Sales is you being chosen over someone else, and marketing is mixing it all together. But the branding is like the fire underneath all of that. It fuels it all. It underpins everything. It's the most important part. And that branding affects your return on investment by increasing that kind of potency and strength of that messaging and the marketing, the advertising, and all the communications. Because that brand experience that you're creating, how you look, how you sound, how you feel, it's the foundation for all of these things. So you can have really, really great marketing, but if your branding's average, then you're just going to get average results. I mean, that's how important the kind of branding is. It's about having that really strong kind of clear message that differentiates you from competitors in a way that kind of engages, has that empathy. It connects with them on a logical and, like I said earlier, logical and emotional level. Because once you've got that kind of link, that bond, once you've got that there, the relationship can grow, customer loyalty will build, the emotional connection will develop, and possibly even beyond the service and benefits you've got. And that's no matter what the size of your business, that's a really powerful position to be in, and that's transformative. So it's return on investment is a tricky one, but it does require effort. It does require some investment. But as we've said, me and Johnny said meetings before, if you think the cost of good brand is expensive, you wait till you see the cost of bad branding.
Very true comment. That's a very, very interesting comment to finish with. Johnny, Jez, thank you very much for all your input. It's been really interesting. Tim, again, thanks for coming on and your input. We will be doing something on cyber very shortly, which Tim will no doubt be chairing on that sort of from. Paul, always a pleasure.
welcome to Tinder, Paul. I'm gonna pass on that, Howard. I think
you're gonna be googling it and seeing what their branding's like, and working from there. And from that, next week we move again, but next week we're going to hit a really contentious point, I think, at the moment that's happening in the recruitment market, is building high performance teams in this modern hybrid world. We're hearing so many companies saying we're now bringing everyone back into the office. We're hearing so many people say we still want hybrid working, flexible working, etc., etc. So we thought we were going to hit that nail on the head and see what happens next week. Johnny, Jez, thanks very much. I hope you all enjoyed today's session, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Take good care.
Bye-bye.